j'ai du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Joining us now, infectious diseases physician and medical director of special pathogens at the Boston University School of Medicine, Dr. Nahid Badilia. She's an NBC News and MSNBC medical contributor. A lot of people, Dr. Badilia, are getting mixed messages from the government about when a vaccine will be ready, if and when testing is ready. But the truth is, in some ways, in terms of reopening, are Americans on their own? And is the best way to protect themselves to follow guidelines about physical distancing?
Well, Mika, it is critical, as you mentioned in the last segment. You know, what countries have done that have done this successfully is provide a unified message of what the best public health practices are. As we're reopening, you know, a lot of the responsibility now sort of shifts on public health bodies and all of our governments to provide what those best practices are. For example, there's stories this weekend about people gathering on beaches, you know, and one may assume gathering in groups of people and keeping social distancing in the outdoor setting might be is safer than being in the indoor setting. But are we providing people with the guidance, for example, of, well, how did you get to the beach? Are you spending close contact with people who are not within your household? Are you sharing, you know, food with them? Are you performing hand hygiene? And all that guidance and constant reminder and availability to do those hygiene and hand hygiene and other aspects are necessary for people to be able to adhere to those guidance.
Yeah, I have a couple more questions about that, but we also have been talking about people who have suffered from COVID, who've been through the process of getting through it. Maybe they suffered greatly, even went to the hospital. But what about in the weeks and months after? What are we learning about ongoing symptoms, ongoing impact, or maybe a whole entire weakening in some ways of the body? What are we learning about the permanent impact of COVID?
Well, Mika, what we're discovering about COVID-19 is that this is a multi-system disease. It's affecting your immune system. You know, it's creating this inflammation that can have potentially longer-lasting damage than just what the acute damage that the virus does is. And so the Guardian story that was released on Friday quotes Professor Tim Spector from King College in London, who says that they're tracking COVID symptoms in patients, and some of them over 6 weeks out are still reporting symptoms that are vague, that are, you know, they're not back to their baseline. And this is what we sometimes discover with emerging infectious diseases, which is that we find symptoms like with COVID, loss of smell, loss of taste, that are new, that we didn't expect. And one of the things that we ourselves are doing here at Boston University School of Medicine is setting up cohorts to examine people who have survived to ensure that there aren't longer lasting symptoms after they recover from acute disease.
Caddy K has a question. Caddy, jump in.
Yeah, Doctor, I want to follow up on what Mika was asking about best practices as the country is reopening up. I'm in Washington, D.C., which has not yet released its lockdown order, but I'm in a household with teenagers and young adults, and they know what is happening around the country. They're seeing other states opening up, and they are desperate to get out and see their friends. Oddly, they think that 2 months of living with their parents is quite enough. And I don't know what to tell them in terms of, okay, you can see friends, but you need to limit, is it limiting the social bubble? What kinds of things could we be saying to our kids who are desperate to get out that would allow them some access to social life, but keep it safe and limited?
Kathy, the biggest thing is maintaining that 6-foot distance, and reducing the number of people that you hang out with at any one time. By doing that, well, we know for sure, in closed spaces where a lot of people are, in any one place at the same time, that's what increases the risk of transmission. There was a case report from Washington, of a choir where 56 out of 60 people became sick spending time with one person who was sick. And so that's a super spreader event where one person could spread to a lot of people. But within households, we know that the risk of secondary attack rates are 10 to 20%. And your susceptibility of picking up that disease gets worse as you get older, about 18% for those who are over 60. And so the best advice would be, if you are spending time outdoors, is probably safer than indoors, but to continue to keep that 6-foot distance and to really maintain good hand hygiene and to not share foods, as I mentioned, and to be aware when you're using public spaces such as public bathrooms and other surfaces, and making sure that you wash your hands right after.
All right, so I'm going to ask practical questions just to sort of get some basic knowledge on here. It may seem ridiculous, but the beaches are opening at some point in Florida across the board. If I bring my mom, who's 87, to the beach, and she is at least 10 feet away from anybody else, and I bring wipes and I wipe off any handles she might be touching walking down the stairs to the beach, is she safe?
Mika, how are you bringing your mom to the beach? So a big part of this is the transportation that we take. The pinch points of this are, where are we crowded and up against each other? Now, if she's within your household already, and that's different because, you are you've already been exposed to each other. And so big part of this is actually all the things that you mentioned, but if she's not part of your household, to use a face covering, just in case, one of you might actually have the disease and not realize it because you don't have the symptoms. But as you mentioned, it is the distance, it is being aware that there are people among us who are at higher risk, and it is decontaminating the surfaces around us.
So what about if people are out exercising and they're running past each other and they're 6 feet apart from each other, but you can smell their perfume? Are you too close?
It actually does take more prolonged exposure to be in the same space. But, when I go running here at the Charles River, I'll see people much closer than 6 feet, which is why I think that there needs to be more timing and more public guidance on how open spaces are used, because people are sitting on the river in the picnic, with other people and very close together without any of those protections. So in that case, the use of face coverings become even more important. There's been simulations done that basically so that as people speak, even when they're not coughing, they're creating these droplets. So it's maintaining a distance between people, and that face covering really protects you.
It is Monday, the 18th of May of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Oh, have we sliced and diced and put together quite a gourmet meal, repurposed though it is, from the weekend. And that has been put up for you today because, hey, that's what we do. We're a salon, and we have a few morsels of information for you that we like to take and, expound upon in our indelible way. And how was your weekend? Did you go out and venture into public life? I think it's a tad too early. Though I will confess, my sister, the nurse, took her granddaughters to the mall. And I just looked at her and said, "Sis, what the hell were you thinking?" And she goes, "Well, we wore masks." Yeah, that's to keep other people from getting sick. How about this, little particles coming in from the outside on the sides of your masks? I mean, come on. I think it would be better, especially since she's in, a essential frontline position. She's already run the risk of being exposed. My gosh. I know everybody's bored. But you know what's more boring than, sitting at home and watching TMC? I would think being dead. I think that's kind of boring because it's for all eternity. Boy, that seems like a long time to me with no hope of getting out. So I would say enjoy what you have now, because you're going to be alive later, okay? And maybe your friends and family too. So this whole opening is nothing more than politics, and they want to say economics. Yeah, it's politics. Because all I know is that if I had a restaurant, like I used to, a cafe, I don't know if I'd have enough covers to be able to cover my day to pay just my utility bill. I had a small cafe, but gotta confess again here, I packed those tables pretty close together. And if I had to spread them apart, my little 8 to 10 table cafe would have 3 tables, maybe 4. But still, I don't know. What do you do? Feed people really quick and get your next 4 tables sat? I think that maybe there might be the other scenario, and you have 4 tables available and no one shows up, or maybe a table a day. Maybe. I did see some maggot-owned cafes, one here in town actually, that was packed over the weekend. A lot of Trump bros and Trump babes, and their little Trump brats too, packed into this little cafe that's really a cottage. In fact, they call it the Cottage Cafe here in Rogue River. No one wearing masks, because masks are for wimps. Yeah, well, we used to talk about dead heroes all the time, and these people are not heroes. Nope. But they are running the risk of being dead and killing other people. We live right next to I-5. This cafe is right where the on-ramp and off-ramp to I-5 is, which is an interstate. Cars travel on the interstate. They stop in the Cottage Cafe, pick up a little bit of, their famous, their pastrami sandwich that you're just going to die for, guaranteed. And pick up that little pastrami sandwich. Actually, it's a big pastrami sandwich, and I should say it's really good. It was really good before the COVID. And I guess now with a little COVID on the side, it's even better. So they pick up their pastrami sandwich with COVID on the side. They travel on the interstate, and they spread the virus. Though here in Oregon, we do have a story coming up about another dynamic that is responsible for the spread of the virus here in Oregon, Marion County in particular. But from Marion County, it went from there. Yeah, a little tidbit. We'll get to that later on. But so we had live golf. Rory McIlroy won the live golf tournament yesterday and had some very sharp words for Trump. Oh, but Trump, he's a golfer, and I guess he didn't hear Rory's little retort. And he's out there just happy as can be. Golf is back. Golf is back. And Obama was the most incompetent president in the world, in all of history, the most corrupt. This guy, there's memes being put out with Obama being dragged away, by Barr and Trump. Little splicing headshot stuff, Obama's head on the perp. Barr and Trump, being the two guys dragging the perp away by the arms. Yeah, that's in their fever dreams, and I'm still trying to figure out. Oh yeah, they bring up the Fast and Furious. Well, that wasn't Obama. Okay, please. That wasn't even Eric Holder, which they try to blame it on as well. No, there was some rogue border agents doing their thing. And when they got caught. And the Republicans conflated it into something like, oh, you were selling guns across the border. No, we're not. Border agents were. And, the border agents were as much against Obama as they kissed the butt of Trump. Boy, Nazis got a Nazi, and Nazis flock together. They have some sort of recognizable stiff arm salute that they all recognize because that's how recognizable it is. So they tried to put a lot of stuff on Obama, and there was no drama Obama. The biggest complaint is that on the left is that he wasn't an angry enough black man for our tastes. And then as soon as he would have been, I got to tell you, a lot of liberals would have said, that's just so unseemly. Don't be so angry. Don't be an angry black man. But, let's be true. Let's be honest to ourselves. We wanted him to be really a lot more angry, and a black man, too, to scare them. But all he had to do was wear a tan suit and be polite, and that was fear enough. Yeah, they're still fearing him. And no drama Obama, the most vetted president in the history of the United States. And really, then on the other side, basically their complaint was he promised to be Superman. If a black man rises to the level he has, he better be Superman. He can't run faster than a speeding bullet. I got to tell you, he's more powerful than a locomotive, though. But, and he was able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. But apparently they said he promised you could keep your doctor if you wanted. Well, what he meant is that they're not going to pay for a quack, okay? And a lot of people wanted quacks for doctors. You promised us that we could have the quack we wanted. No, we want you to have the doctor that's licensed. And in this system, if they choose to not be in the system, that's them. That's not us. But, take a little bit and they run with it because, I was going to say it's their lizard brain, but I just read a report that actually the wiring that would have them become lizard brains doesn't exist in humans. So we've been incorrect on calling them lizard brains, but they sure do act like they do. Okay. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here? There's so much to talk about, and we could go on with Grinnell, a little Twitter troll. I swear to God, Biden better not be lying, okay? Because Trump needs to be in a federal lockup, and every single one of his sycophants from Barr, Grinnell, DeVos, etc., needs to be in a federal lockup when this is said and done. And some of them, like Trump and Stephen Miller and a few others, when they've served their time in a federal lockup, they better be frog-marched to The Hague. I don't care what damn law we've made up that makes us exempt from, crimes against humanity. Bull pucky. Okay, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe? Well, as we started off, of course, we had a little breakdown on the protocols we're going to need to follow as Trump forces the nation to reopen. And we better be aware that large crowds in enclosed spaces is what it takes to spread the virus. Now, my sister did say that there were only about 3 shops open in the mall, and there weren't very many people there. Well, let's hope she got lucky. I love my sister, and I love my little grandnieces, too. I really do. On the rest of the menu, a women's health advocacy group purchased an Alabama abortion clinic to keep it from closing. Well, I'm sure Alabama's going to make some law that says they can't do that. Because the protection of property doesn't apply to people that they disagree with. That's how America works. Where you been? Trump's firing of the State Department's IG could be unlawful. Now, that's a quote. I would say, actually, it is unlawful if it was intended to retaliate against one of his investigations. The one where Pompeo and his wife are acting all royal and ordering everybody around, telling their staff and security detail, go pick up my El Pollo Loco now. And racism spread the virus in Oregon. It did. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Nigeria impounded a British plane for breaking its coronavirus flight ban rules. Yeah, they weren't bringing essential equipment. No, and they weren't on one of those life flights either. What were they doing? Well, something that violated the flight ban. And Albanian authorities, using the pandemic as cover, began demolishing the National Theater after dragging away dozens of its actors and activists at gunpoint. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. You know, she's had to shelter in place away from her regular domicile for quite some time now in New York, and it looks like it might be late June or July before she gets back to her place for real. So hang in there, Kelly. We're all in this together. I don't know if that makes it any better, but still we are. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, of course, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is our link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, that contribution, maybe how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink sent to us once a month, helps us pay our bills. And those bills keep going up. You know, they went up during the pandemic, and now a few more of them are going up during the pandemic, later on in the pandemic, after they already knew how hard it is for people during a pandemic. I don't know. Maybe it was just regular. It was just part of their regular actuary clock. Could be. Anyway, our bills keep going up, and I got to tell you, though the bulk of how we make this little powerhouse of resistance resist comes out of our own wallets, we would be unable to do this without you, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And that is sincere. There's no joke about that. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so by going simply to @NetrootsRadio. Tom from the Coffee Cast takes care of that because he's also part of our team. Thank you, Tom. Your help is invaluable. Thank you. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, it is so simple. You just go to Justice Putnam. Make sure it's man spelled backwards on Putnam. Okay? Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on social media because that's what you're supposed to do when you have social media. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. And all the rest of us are there. And there's a lot more of us than there are of them, whoever them are. Well, we have a pretty good idea, don't we? Alrighty, we better dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. And Kim Chandler from the Associated Press brings us this first offering. Conservative lawmakers in Alabama last year tried to enact the nation's most stringent abortion ban, but the attempt to outlaw the procedure may have had one ironic twist. Now, I remember in the 70s, because I was alive then. In fact, I wasn't only alive, I was conscious. In fact, I wasn't only conscious. I was getting ready to be able to vote. Getting old enough to be able to vote, 18. was when they changed the law to 18. I was one of the first. Well, wasn't the first. But Roe v. Wade came down while I was just finishing up high school. And I know, I had a civics teacher, and she said, yeah, well, this is just a battle. This is a war that's going on, and they're going to fight this every step of the way. Don't sit on your laurels and think that this is a great victory and, it's just going to exist. And also remember, back then, they were fighting about birth control. Basically it was just women having sex was icky. And if they have sex, we don't want to know it. Icky. These people. Anyway, an Alabama-based abortion rights group used a flood of donations that poured in from across the country after the ban to purchase the state's busiest abortion clinic to ensure it stays open. Yellow Hammer Fund, a group founded to help low-income women access abortion, announced the purchase of West Alabama Women's Center on Friday, the one-year anniversary of the passage of the Alabama ban. I don't understand how they can ban it. Because, they still had a Supreme Court decision. I know, they're trying to get to the Supreme Court because the guy who likes beer and the other guy was installed there because of Merrick Garland being blocked, are there to assure that, some red meat can be thrown to the base. And when it comes time to actually rule on Trump, maybe those two will be enough to pull a few more over like Clarence Thomas. And I'm looking at you too, Alito. I said this a year ago. When they didn't anticipate, or what they did not anticipate they would do is help us increase abortion access in Alabama, said Amanda Race, executive director of Yellow Hammer Fund. Race said the flood of donations helped the group purchase the clinic from the owner who was looking to retire. Energized by the new conservatives on the U.S. Supreme Court, abortion opponents in several conservative states are launching direct legal challenges to the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade decision that legalized abortion nationally. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey last year signed into law legislation that would make performing an abortion at any stage of pregnancy a felony, punishable by up to 99 years or life in prison for the abortion provider. So she's not really attacking women's rights. She's just telling, silicone boobs? Yeah, that's fine. Botox in the lips? No worry. Drink bleach? Please do. But saving a woman's life? That might be questionable. That could be considered murder if you do that. And I thought there was a 1973 Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision that prevented making this procedure illegal and charging even doctors with a 99-year prison sentence. But that's just me. I'm a romantic. A federal judge blocked the Alabama law from taking into effect while a challenge plays out in court. International attention on the Alabama ban prompted an outpouring of donations as celebrities shared information on their social media accounts about the group and the fight in Alabama. It was like a deluge. It was literally like a deluge of grassroots donations. Well, it wasn't literally like, it was literally a deluge of grassroots donations, indeed. Gloria Gray, who has owned the clinic since 1993, said in a statement issued through Yellowhammer that she was looking to retire, but had been concerned about keeping the clinic's doors open. I've been waiting for years, holding out until I could sell my interest in the company without affecting the clinic, without preventing women from being able to get abortions in Alabama, Gray said. Yellowhammer did not disclose the purchase price. Doina Shiaku of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump's firing of the State Department's top internal watchdog could be unlawful if it was intended to retaliate against one of his investigations, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said yesterday, Sunday. Trump on late Friday ousted Inspector General Stephen Linick, the fourth Inspector General he has fired since early April, following his February acquittal by the Republican-controlled Senate in his impeachment trial. Essentially, what he continued doing was what he was impeached for, abuse of power. Yeah, I know it was lying and all this other stuff, but still abuse of power, let's be clear. Now, we don't, according to our Netroots Radio Style Manual, we don't attribute the term president to Trump, but in a direct quote, sometimes we have to, and that's how it is in this case. In this case, following right now, as a matter of fact. The president has the right to fire any federal employee. But the fact is, if it looks like it is in retaliation for something the IG, the Inspector General was investigating, that could be unlawful, Pelosi said on CNN's State of the Union. The top Democrats on the House and Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Saturday began a probe into the firing, saying it was their understanding that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo personally recommended Linick's sacking because the Inspector General had opened an investigation into wrongdoing by Pompeo himself. Well, the word is that Pompeo and his wife were acting all royal. And, you know, I mean, we've been wondering about for some time about Pompeo's wife on every foreign trip ordering staff around. She doesn't have any official function in government. So, I don't know. I guess it's okay for them. Because when you've sold out America to Vlad and probably other hostile foreign actors, you know, for probably a commission. You know, a little crime, like ordering staff around and telling them to go pick up your chicken order or take your dog to the groomer and pick it up on the taxpayer dime? My God. The black guy couldn't, fund the ACA. But apparently it's okay to use taxpayer money to, I don't know. What's that called? There's a law against it, I heard. A State Department spokesperson confirmed Linick had been fired, but did not comment on Pompeo's role in the dismissal. Well, yeah, because they're all a bunch of mobsters. They don't care. They don't care about America. All right. A White House advisor, Peter Navarro, meanwhile, downplayed the firing, saying that what Trump terms the deep state has caused problems, and those who are not loyal must go. Well, of course. When you've sold out America to Vlad, and you are being investigated for doing that, you're going to fire those people. When your Vichy collaborators in the GOP-controlled Senate turn a blind eye to your crimes, probably because they are all accomplices to the crime. That's why they're Vichy collaborators. They're not collaborating just Vichy. This smells like rotten tuna in a vichyssoise salad. resides here in Oregon is an Eastern Oregon rancher and longtime reporter and now publisher of Oregon journalism. And he has a mentoring program for young journalists and gets them gets them employed at various small local newspapers all over Oregon. So there's a lot of rural parts of Oregon. So he is head of the Malheur Enterprise, and one of his satellite offices is in Salem, and the journalists there work for the Salem Reporter, and they are Rachel Alexander, Safara Harrell, and Jake Thomas. Bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Now, I'm going to give somewhat of a synopsis, and I would like folks to go ahead and read the full article. It's quite comprehensive. Essentially, what the story breaks down to is that racism spread the virus in Oregon. We were one of the first to do the lockdown, and our deaths and infection rates have been low. Now, of course, we need to be able to test more. That is not the fault of the Democratic governor, of course. We know where the blame lay in our inability to test and even outright hardship in being able to test. Obstacles put in the way to perform tests on purpose. But our infection rates and whatnot and deaths have been somewhat lower, even better than California's, because of our early lockdown, our shelter in place. And a lot of the Trump brats really hated it. You know, anything a Democratic governor does, especially if she's a woman, is always untoward, and she's such a dictator. I always love it that there's a certain mindset in our political spectrum that thinks that getting health care and protecting you from a death-causing virus is being a dictator. But stealing your money and giving it at $20 million at a pop to the aviation industry, to Applebee's, to Shake Shack, to Ruth's Chris, and your little cottage cafe in Rogue River, Oregon didn't get that money, and you're going to blame Kate Brown for it. That's how it sort of works here. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that she's such a dictator because she wanted illegals to have driver's licenses. First of all, they are not illegal. Illegal is a racist term now, isn't it? Yes, it is. Because I got to tell you, do you call Annie M an illegal when she doesn't pay her parking ticket on time? Because that's the extent of the lawful infraction about being, quote, an illegal person in America when you're brown or black or yellow or all of the above. So you could say it is just mere inequality that caused the virus to spread in Oregon. That people of means who have insurance either through the ACA, the state-operated ACA, the employer offered insurance plans, but those supposed illegals who don't get any of those benefits. But when workers in the fields, in the packing houses, in the canneries, in the gas stations, in the warehouses, etc., 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 asked to be tested, asked to have some time off, they were denied it. The virus spread. They were not codified either, by the way, until much later. They couldn't figure out how it was that in Marion County, now that's where the state capital is, which I should also tell folks that it is also one of the more conservative areas of Oregon, and it's not rural. It is quite suburban urban. All right? So let's be clear about that. So the long-time racism that has existed in Oregon reared its ugly head. And the virus spread, and we're just now finding out why. And racism spread the virus in Oregon. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky.
We have more cases than anybody in the world. But why? Because we do more testing. When you test, you have a case. When you test, you find something is wrong with people. If we didn't do any testing, we would have very few cases.
The logic is unassailable. As writer Quinn Cummings tweeted almost immediately after the president's remarks, "Remember, kids, you don't want a baby? Stay away from pregnancy tests." But think about what this no testing idea could really mean. Have you had a colonoscopy? I have. Have you had a mammogram? I have not, but I hear they're pretty rough. So think about what we could do to cut colon and breast cancer cases by simply doing away with those tests. And think of all the poor children who are tested for various conditions, especially the newborns and their genetic tests. Why put the little tykes through it? And have you considered the impact on sports? I mean, without testing for performance-enhancing drugs, if baseball is ever played again, the records could just be demolished. And what kind of an Olympics could we have without testing for drugs? Swimming records, track and field records, these would just be absolutely decimated. It would be a wonder to behold. But anything wind-aided would still be disqualified because, hey, rules are rules. And obviously, if we stop testing for the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, there won't be any noticeable increase in the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And Nita even mentioned the annoying interruptions to our television programming with the emergency broadcast test. Let's do away with those and never have to deal with the possibility of a national emergency.
And we have prevailed. We will continue to prevail.
Sweetie, want some fruit?
You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Our society has coined expressions like philanthropist to encourage and hail people's charitable spirit. Look on the flip side of that shiny coin of generosity, however, and you'll find that its base substance is societal selfishness. After all, the need for charity only exists because we're tolerating intentional injustices and widespread inequality created by power elites. A society as supremely wealthy as ours ought not be relegating needy families and essential components of the common good to the whims of a few rich philanthropists. Yes, corporate and individual donations can help at the margins, but they don't fix anything. Thus, food banks, health clinics, etc. must constantly scrounge for more charity, while big donors have their charitable spirit subsidized with tax breaks that siphon money from our public treasury. Especially offensive to me is the common grandiose assertion by fat cat donors that charity is their way of, quote, giving back to society. Hello? If they can give so much, it's probably because they've been taking too much. As business columnist Andrew Ross Sorkin points out, all too often, charitable gifts are used to make up for the failure of companies to pay people a living wage and treat their workers with dignity. It's not just the unemployed who rely on food banks, but janitors, nannies, Uber drivers, checkout clerks, and others who work full-time but are so poorly paid they can't make ends meet. That's not a sad charity case, but a matter of criminal exploitation by wealthy elites. And the charitable thing to do is to outlaw it and require a living wage for all. This is Jim Hightower saying, as Sorkin puts it, the aim should be to create a society where we don't need places like food banks. We should be trying to put the food banks out of business.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day an Oklahoma City jury found in favor of the estate of Karen Silkwood. Karen worked as a lab tech at the Cimarron nuclear plant operated by the Kerr-McGee Corporation. Karen joined the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers International Union during a 1972 strike at the plant. She walked the picket line, returning to work once the strike was ended. Karen remained very concerned about safety standards in the plant. So much so that she decided to serve on the union's bargaining team. She also agreed to secretly collect documentation of the plant's negligence. In November, she did a routine self-check and found she had higher than normal levels of plutonium, an incredibly deadly substance in her body. Further investigation found her home was contaminated as well. She became convinced that her employer was attempting to poison her. Kerr-McGee accused Karen of poisoning herself to put nuclear companies in a bad light. Despite her fears, Karen pressed on with her investigation. She was on her way to meet with a union representative and a reporter from the New York Times when she died in a mysterious car accident. She was allegedly carrying a manila folder of documents related to her investigation. The documents were never found. Evidence showed that she was likely forced off the road by another vehicle. The jury found the company at fault for the plutonium contamination, awarding more than $10.5 million in damages. The company fought the verdict and eventually settled with the family for $1.38 million. In 1983, Meryl Streep starred in a movie, Silkwood, telling the story of this incredible woman who gave her life fighting for worker safety. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 52 degrees. Actually, it's not That's not so bad. But we will be a tad cooler than we were over the weekend. We had highs in the upper 60s to low 70s with rain, which felt quite Hawaiian, I should add. And because we're pretty much in the same parallel there as Hawaii. Fancy that. Anyway, we had quite a bit of rain over the weekend, bumping about 3/4 of an inch, and we're expecting 1/4 of an inch to 1/3 today, and about 1/10 of an inch overnight. So looks like we'll have a high of 60 degrees. Rain showers early that will evolve into a more steady rain for the afternoon. Thunder is possible. I did put out a warning that the mothership might be impacted by electrical activity in the atmosphere. And I'll just put that out to you here, because if we do get kicked off, be patient. We'll be right back on. Because unlike most acts of God, which usually apply to our ISP, because whatever they say is an act of God, isn't that the truth? Electrical activity in the atmosphere seems godlike to me. It's got a lot of energy. Ooh. Anyway, we'll have rain showers this evening with overcast skies overnight. Lows in the upper 40s to low 50s. Winds light and variable today and tonight. And mostly cloudy skies tomorrow with a high in the mid-60s. Winds will then pick up out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Coronavirus infections confirmed cases stand at 50, and deceased is not applicable because apparently they're not telling us in Jackson County. I thought it was because we didn't have any. We don't really know. Isn't that odd? I wonder why that is. Since we're the most conservative part of Oregon, with Oath Keeper sheriffs. And all the politicians that allow an Oath Keeper sheriff to hold office, my God. Grass pollen right outside the mothership is rated very high. The air quality in the region is good at 27 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is high at 7. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.7 inches. Visibility is down to 4 miles, and relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Yes, they do. London is 73 and sunny, and people are going out to have fun and get more coronavirus. Paris is 75 and sunny, and they're going to get coronavirus. They got to smell the flowers next to each other. Rome is 81 and partly cloudy, and they're seeing another spike in coronavirus. Kyiv is 58 and fair, but we don't really know how much coronavirus they have, but what we do know is not good. Kabul is 62 with a light rain and thunder and coronavirus. Hong Kong is 76 and mostly cloudy, and mostly a bunch of idiots that don't care about spreading coronavirus because they're free. Tokyo is 67 with a rain shower and an economy that looks like they're going to have a massive recession because of coronavirus. Sydney, Australia is 60 and partly cloudy, and they're still dealing with reopening and having a spike in localities of coronavirus. San Francisco, California is 55 and partly cloudy, and I guess we'll find out in 2 weeks what this phased-in reopening will transpire because of coronavirus. And New York is 60 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy, with still a lot of refrigerator trucks outside funeral homes, hospitals, and other places where people are dying because of coronavirus. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Nigeria impounded a plane operated by a British company for contravening a flight ban imposed to prevent the spread of the coronavirus, because the AP style manual keeps calling coronavirus the coronavirus. Come on. It's coronavirus or the COVID-19 or the coronavirus pandemic. Please, grammar is grammar, and we shouldn't be lessening our standards just because of coronavirus. Passenger flights into the country, with the exception of the ones to evacuate people or repatriate Nigerian citizens, have been banned for weeks. The ban will remain in place until at least June 4th. Flights for essential services, such as the delivery of food and items for humanitarian use, are permitted. Aviation Minister Hadi Sarika said on Sunday yesterday that a plane had been impounded after the rules were broken. Sarika said a UK company was given approval for humanitarian operations, but regrettably we caught them conducting commercial flights. The craft is impounded, the crew being interrogated. There shall be a maximum penalty. I should add, no one asked what the maximum penalty is.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers. C'est tout.
Bennett Koleka of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Albanian authorities began demolishing the National Theatre building early yesterday, Sunday, after dragging away 24 actors and activists protecting the site, drawing a large crowd chanting shame and dictatorship. For more than 2 years, actors, activists, and the opposition have contested plans by Socialist Prime Minister Edi Rama to build a new theater, saying the existing building was part of the country's heritage and accused him of corrupt practices. A large police force showed up before dawn and removed members of the alliance to protect the theater using pepper spray and brandishing guns. Mechanized diggers then began demolishing its front column, bearing the words National Theater. The fate of the building, constructed in 1939 and made into a national theater in 1945, has divided society, with many angry that Rama had chosen the act during the coronavirus lockdown. Well, dictators got a dictator now, don't they? And what better way to destroy your heritage than during a pandemic? That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.